order. Being first with roll call, please.
Counselor Allegro.
Here.
Mayor Sakala.
Here.
Counselor Crisati.
Here.
Counselor Hall.
Here.
Counselor Mangini.
Here.
Counselor Matthews.
Here.
Counselor Pisner.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Santinelli.
Here.
Counselor Thomas.
Here.
Counselor Ungary.
Here.
And Counselor Zanoni.
Here.
11 members are present, none are absent.
Thank you. Number 2 on the agenda, so it's a special meeting, so we really only have one item that we're discussing this evening, and that's the charter. So the resolution to submit the town council recommended changes to the Charter Revision Commission's draft report or statement of no recommended changes to the commission for consideration. Be it resolved that the Enfield Town Council hereby submit the attached recommendations for changes in the draft report or statement of no recommendations to the Charter Revision Commission for consideration. Date prepared June 16th, 2026 by Sheila Bailey, Town Clerk.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. So we have the draft report. Are there any recommendations for changes? Go ahead, Councilor Pisner.
So there was actually 2 recommendations. My recommendation was I was asking for the same grace, the extra 90 days on the town attorney as we are giving to a town manager. And I understand that the town manager did say to us at the last meeting that is because normally the town attorney is from a local pool, and it's not something that we need to extend to. But we live in a time where finding somebody to fill a vacancy is not always the easiest thing in the world. So I would rather be safe than sorry. And I think by granting an extra 90 days, as we do in a town manager, just gives us a little bit more time to vet our candidates moving forward if we need to. So that was my one recommendation on this one.
Okay. Do you have specific language? Do you want to read? Do you want to read that amendment?
I can.
So you're making an amendment
Okay.
to the resolution or the amendment or resolution or, let's say, a recommendation for changes?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I'm perfectly happy to read that. The council may, by a vote of 6 or more members, adopt a resolution. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry, it's yours.
Well, hang on. I'm sorry. I may have screwed it up. It doesn't, shouldn't she just read the recommended?
She's making an amendment
Yes.
to the draft report.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I didn't know I had to read that. I thought I was just giving my opinion.
Yeah, so that's,
Yeah.
I said amendment to the resolution, what it's not. It's the
Okay.
amendment to the draft report, so that was my fault. But yes, they do want you to read your language.
Okay. On it. Okay. In the event there is a vacancy in the office of the town attorney, the council may appoint an interim attorney to serve at the pleasure of the council for a period of up to 90 days. If the position is not fulfilled at the expiration of this 90 days date period, the intern town attorney's term may be renewed for an additional period not to exceed 90 days. The council may extend the term of the intern town attorney for not more than 30 additional days upon an affirmative vote of the 2/3 of the council seated and present.
Okay. So the motion was made and seconded to amend the report of the recommendations.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Counselor Hall seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So why don't we do that one first? We'll do that discussion because I do believe that there's another recommendation for an amendment. So discussion on this amendment. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. So it's 90 days, then an additional 90 days, 180 days, and then an additional 30 days. Is that?
Correct, same as we are for
so
town
7
manager.
months.
Same as
7
the
months.
town manager.
Okay. I mean, my only comment is I think 7 months for a local person, someone who's licensed and practiced here. I think you talked about this. I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm just offering my thoughts. I just think that that's an awful long time. And I think just when people have a lot of time, then they take a lot of time. And I think, I don't know that that necessarily serves the community or the council best to not force them to get somebody in more quickly that's a local person. That's my only concern with this, but we've also been in the position where we're up against it and we don't have a deadline. We don't have flexibility in the charter. So I don't know. I would just if anything, it would be an additional 30 days, which is a whole fiscal quarter, which seems to be like a reasonable amount to me. But that's my only comment here.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this proposed recommendation to be sent back? Go ahead. Counselor Thomas.
Is this up to 90 days or just an additional 90 days?
So the way the town manager reads is that we get a 90 days, and then another 90 days, and we can extend that for 30. I'm just asking for the same grace on a town attorney, because my 4.5 years on the council, we've run into that, where it has taken us time to find somebody. We don't live in a world where people are jumping on board, and that's my opinion. I get it if everybody else thinks it's too long, but it doesn't mean we have to take all that time. It just gives us that additional time to find the right fit. That's all I'm saying. I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Thank you.
All set? All set? Counselor Zanoni?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to the point that it doesn't have to take the time, and I think when myself and Councilor Casati sat as Charter Revision Commission members, we had a discussion about adding a deadline for in the event if the budget, didn't pass, because technically, July 1st. Do you remember that conversation briefly? And the reason we never wanted to put it needs to get completed by a specific date beyond what's set by statute is we didn't want to incentivize or condone the council taking longer than necessary to do work. And so I think to the town manager's point from last meeting, if we have reasonable assurance that there's enough applicants, is it necessary to belabor an appointment and draw out an appointment? So I think that's, for me, my hesitation with it, but I understand your perspective. Thank you.
Any other discussion on this? Go ahead, Counselor Hall.
So I just think to a point that Marie really already made, and it's not like we have to take that time. We can, obviously, if we come and we find somebody sooner for the position, that's wonderful. But I just think it gives us that much of a safeguard in case we don't. And we all know how hard it's been to find people, and not necessarily in the attorney role, but across the whole gamut of employees. So I just think it just gives us a little leeway. I think if we find the right person in a timely manner, obviously we're going to hire them. I don't think it hurts to have a little bit more of a buffer. So that's all my thought.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this amendment? All right, so all in favor of Marie's amendment, raise a hand. 3 in favor, all against? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 8 against. So that amendment does not pass. And there was any other recommendations, Counselor Hall?
So in Section 9, I know we talked about this at the last meeting when the Charter Revision folks were here with us. And I think talking with the town manager on this particular section, I know that the discussion was not had about reserve accounts that the board holds and how they can utilize that. What my concern was in Section 9 is I don't want to see, and I don't think this would be an intention, but it's vague enough for wiggle room on this, in my opinion, to confine the spending cap that we're allotted right now in our charter to sidestep, if you will, the voters. So for the folks that are watching out there, we're limited on the money we can spend of your tax dollars on any given project in any given year. So it's a percentage of the budget. And what this does is this section talks about taking state or federal dollars that are given to the town directly for a specific project, and this is where I think the charter revision folks were going. It makes complete sense that we would take those funds and they would be put towards the project. These projects would not have to go out to a referendum because they were given for a very specific purpose. I think where this section gets a little muddy is we get huge amounts of money from the state for the Board of Ed. ECS funds are all state grant funds, and in order to make this section work, in my opinion, now you're going to be getting very specific line items in the board's budget, and it's just a matter of commingling funds. It's going to be very confusing, in my opinion. So all this section does is clarify what I think the intent of the charter revision people were. I did ask Matt if they discussed the 2% funds and looked at this section with that in mind, and they did not take that into account in their discussions. So I think all this does is it protects our residents' right to vote on any of the referendums that involve huge projects. So it's not allowing, whether it be the council or the Board of Ed, to go forward with a project and not have weigh-in from the residents. So that's my intent, is to just clarify this section. I don't think it changes anything that they proposed. I think it just puts a little bit of a clarification on the section. That's all. And I know they did not talk about the 2% fund. They probably wouldn't even be aware of it. So, so this piece I'll read into the record, and I am proposing to make an amendment to the draft. The council may, by a vote of 6 or more members, adopt a resolution appropriating the money authorized expenditures for capital improvements. Any such authorization of expenditures that requires a net expenditure of the town funds exceeding in any fiscal year 0.02% of the current grand list shall not be effective until it shall be submitted to and approved by the electors of the town by a referendum vote. And the dark highlighted section that you can read here is, for the purpose of this section, the term net expenditure of the town fund shall include all town-controlled financial resources used for the project, regardless of timing or source of appropriation. This includes, but is not limited to, current appropriations for the prior year appropriations, unexpended balances, designated or undesignated funds, fund balances, reserve funds, carry forwards, or any other funds held, accumulated, or reserved by any of the town department, board, or agency, including the Board of Ed. So for the purposes of this section, the above referenced term net expenditure of town funds shall include any and all amounts contributed or provided by the state or federal grant, state or federal reimbursements, or other non-town funding sources.
I
Wow,
second.
That was a lot.
I
Sorry.
second it.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so that motion to amend the draft report was made and seconded. Any discussion? Go ahead, Counselor Mangini.
I will not support such an amendment for a couple of reasons. One, we're looking at the Board of Education. As far as the funding, that should not be entered into this discussion. It's a finance piece that needs to remain intact. And then the second concern that I have is the referendum. When we start talking referendum, why don't we, take a look at the surrounding towns and see how well those referendums have panned out? The costs associated with such referendums, and also the purposes of putting their budgets to referendum. I see that would only cause more confusion, more liability on our town, so I won't be supporting that.
Thank you. Counselor Pisner?
So I'm going to respectfully disagree that Board of Ed should be excluded from this. So the wording that we've added will give true transparency to the money that the state is giving the town. It should not be hidden. And this will give it the true transparency that it needs. I'm in full support of this. It's just a clarification of words. It's not changing anything. It's just explaining it. And the people have the right to know, whether it's tax dollars from the state or the town, they have the right to know where it's being spent. So I'm in full support. And all we're doing is changing a little verbiage. That's all it is. So I'm in full support of this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Oh, hang on one second. Counselor Crissati?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate your amendment, but I I disagree with it because the boards of education are not agencies of the town. The boards of education are agencies of the state. And for us trying to control what the Board of Ed is doing with their funds, to me, is incorrect. And I know that this particular group, we talked about this group, this particular section and the verbiage that was stated here, and we were very comfortable with it. The attorneys that were working on this were also comfortable with the wordage with that. But you have to be careful by just singling out and including the Board of Ed, because they are not agencies of the town. We just have to remember that. Okay, that's my only opinion that I have to state on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor Zanoni?
Yeah,
I understand.
a few things. So first, the only reason that the Board of Ed, and I think to Counselor Hall's point, is being drawn out in this discussion is because it literally was not accounted for in the commission's discussions. And it's still tax dollars, our tax dollars being accounted for. And I think in respects when we're talking about conversation about control, it's not the 11 of us controlling their finances. It's a question of if it would go to the voters of the town of Enfield, the residents. So it's not us controlling the Board of Ed. It's the voters would have the control. And in respects to Councilor Mangini, my question is, what were you referencing in regards to a referendum? Because I didn't understand what you were saying. Can you elaborate on that?
When it goes to the voters for a vote, that would qualify for a referendum vote.
Yeah, but that's already in our charter.
Correct. However, with this language, it could strengthen the whole concept of sending additional funds that we receive from the state off to a referendum. And that, in my opinion, could be inappropriate. It could also be the council not doing due diligence with being in charge of those funds. And especially what Councilman Crissati pointed out with the Board of Education, we don't have control over the Board of Education nor their funds. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that whatever you put out there for a referendum, could fail, could go south. And if it's something that's important for the Board of Education, let's say for an example, that should need those funds for, let's say, a specific project, then that would be an issue. That could create a serious concern. That's my only hesitation. I don't want to see a good deed go sour.
So I think
because of language.
I gather that, but I think to your point, and the town manager has already stated that this language is purely clarifying language. It would not actually substantively change. So what you're referencing in terms of specific outcomes as a result of referendum, that would not change as a result of this language. It's just clarifying so that everybody's I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And I think in respects to things going to referendum long-term in projects, there has been too many instances, I think, in which the town council has circumvented the will of the voters. Things have gotten voted down, and then we break it up into 30 different projects when the voters already said that they didn't want it done. So leaving it with the voters, I think, is in the interest of the town, and I think if it fails, it fails. Why would we circumvent the will of the voters? I don't
Because I think the
that.
language that the commission has drafted and put forward to us in this document is fine. They've done a good job. We all agree.
I think they have done a fine
and
job.
I think we should respect the language as it stands and not embellish or make changes. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
All right. My final comment is I think the commission has done a fine job, but to the point, if discussions about important individual funds of the Board of Education weren't pertinent to their discussions, I think that's something that we are responsible to consider in this regard. So I'll be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Councilor Ungary?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think anything we can say to make things clearer for residents is beneficial, because I've had to explain things over and over. To me, I thought it was simple, but it wasn't simple enough. And we don't control how the Board of Ed spends their money. We don't want to, and we never have, so no one's trying to do that. This just makes it a little bit simpler, so people can really understand. And we're accountable for everything, so there's no harm, no foul in just changing some verbiage to make it more understanding.
Thank you. Councilor Matthews, did you have your hand up? Please.
Through the mayor to the town manager, if you could just play devil's advocate for me, just for a moment, to help me understand this a little bit better and make an informed decision. What are the pitfalls of not adopting this language? What can you see going wrong if we don't have this clarifying phrase?
Well, I think, and I don't want to speak for Councilor Hall, so I'm going to try not to speak for you. No. I think, the intention is to make sure that the words that we're using today is understood 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever, right? I think if we looked at the language that's in the charter right now, to the point of does it apply or doesn't it apply to the schools, it applies to the schools. Because even though, they answer in a lot of ways to the states, that's town money that they're spending. And if they're spending town money, they follow our rules on the expenditure. Now, there's carve-outs there throughout, how they do it, because there are some state things. But when it gets to large expenditures like this, my understanding in talking with bond councils about things like this is that they would have to follow what the town's rules are, right? So when we did have this discussion with the Charter Revision Commission, I don't recall specifically talking about schools. But we did have a conversation about all town funds, and when we talked about the school buildings, it's like, well, those are town buildings. So, everything that happens in those buildings ultimately have to come through the town and have to follow whatever the town's rules are for those purchases. Now, where I think it gets a little squirrely in this is going to be the school districts receive money from other sources, not just the town funds, not just the state funds that come through the town to the schools. And you know, that money counts and can be placed different places. And so this would kind of address that you know, if it gets into that non-lapsing fund for whatever reason, it still would have to go through the charter process. Yeah. Is it necessary language? I don't think so. I mean, because again, I'm pure in this, that I think a town attorney or a bond counsel would say, you know, it's going to be a town project in the end, because the school doesn't do these projects, the town does them. And so you have to follow what the charter says. It just kind of, there was a phrase somewhere in one of the meetings about belt and suspenders. I mean, I think that's what this does, is put a belt and suspenders on what that language means.
Thank you. All set? Okay. Counselor Hall, you had your hand up.
Just a follow-up on what Matt said. I think he said it perfectly. I don't think it changes this section at all. It doesn't change the intent of what the charter revision folks had in mind. It just makes it clear. I think it just makes it a little clearer, and that's it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. This is what I'll say about it. I appreciate the wanting to clarify and the need to make sure that we're trying to have people be able to easily understand this. But I just want to make sure everybody's clear that whether the proposed amended recommended changes go in or not, it's not changing what is in the charter, okay? Yeah. What I will say is sometimes in the world of trying to be more clear, you will do the opposite with the more verbiage and more language that you put in. The more it muddies up the water, the more people are saying, may look, not definitely, may look at this and say, well, this, and this is included, but this isn't. So what about this? Is this not included? But I think the language that is in there without the amendment is clear. It does include the Board of Education. It does include all town funds. I am worried, and where my reservation is the more language you try to add to clarify, sometimes does the opposite. And in a world of transparency, what we're trying to do here, sometimes it like I said, it does the opposite. So that is exactly word salad, right? Mm-hmm. So I understand the intent. Both, we have all said it's not going to change what this covers or what it doesn't cover, whether the adopted recommended changes or the amendment to the recommended changes are put in. I just worry that it may make it more difficult to follow and understand the more we add. So, all right, so there was an amendment and a second. So if there's no other discussion, we can do a vote on the amendment? Okay. All in favor of the amendment on the, of Councilor Hall's amendment? 4 in favor, all against? 7 against, any abstentions? No abstentions. So 4 in favor, 7 against, no abstentions. Any other proposed amendments or recommended changes? Okay, so just for clarity, Sheila, do I need to read the be it resolved piece since we're not doing any recommended changes?
So I would ask for an amendment to the main resolution.
Okay.
And it would be that number 1, to accept the draft as the final.
Okay, all right, so if there are no other amendments proposed, then if I can get a friendly amendment to amend the resolution. Deputy Mayor.
So I'll make a friendly amendment to say the Enfield Town Council hereby accepts
Yeah.
the draft report of the Charter Revision Commission as a final draft.
Second.
So the Enfield Town Council accepts the Charter Revision Commission's draft report as the final report?
Yep.
Is that got that language? Okay, so that motion or that amendment was made and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of that amendment? 8 in favor, all against? 3 against? All right, any discussion on the main motion as amended? Any further discussion? All right, sensing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Allegro.
4.
Mayor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Hall.
Against.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
Counselor Matthews.
4.
Counselor Pisner.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Santinella.
4.
Counselor Thomas.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
Against.
And Counselor Zanoni.
4.
That's 8 in favor and 3 against.
Thank you. Number 3 on the agenda is adjournment. If I can get a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? 11 in favor, none against. All right, thank you.